I've created this series of podcasts to discuss how mental health is represented in today's media and the impacts it has on our audience's view of mental health. Mental health is already a deeply stigmatized topic, and more each day people rely on the media for their knowledge about mental health. It is crucial that these media portrayals are accurate, because inaccurate representations can be deeply harmful to these communities and the damage can be irreparable. In today's podcast, we will be discussing the representation of addiction, also known as substance abuse disorder, in the 2018 film Beautiful Boy. Beautiful Boy is a Felix van Groeningen film starring Timothée Chalamet as Nick Sheff and Steve Carell as his father, David Sheff. Beautiful Boy is the story of Nick Sheff's struggle with methamphetamine addiction and how his father helps him to overcome his addiction while putting the audience in a first-hand view of how addiction affects his relationships. Addiction is a neuropsychological condition in which the person cannot resist the persistent and intense urge to engage in an activity which is harmful to them. Engaging in these activities comes to the point where it is compulsive. Addiction can have a wide variety of effects on the person suffering from the condition. These can be categorized into two main groups, mental and physical. Depending on a person's predisposition, there could be many different mental side effects that vary drastically. They are dependent on the type of drug, the person's living conditions, support system, pre-existing conditions, and frequency and dosage of the use. Nevertheless, research shows that every person with an addiction experiences changes to their personality. These changes include losing interest in passions, becoming suspicious and secretive, becoming anxious and or depressed, gaining emotional volatility, choosing different friends and leaving old ones, and engaging in risky behavior. Though the mental effects themselves vary, the physical reactions in the brain that cause these effects are constant throughout people addicted to many different drugs. These effects include, but are not limited to, the basal ganglia, the extended amygdala, and the prefrontal cortex, as well as depleted pain receptors and rewiring the dopamine system in the reward pathway. An incredibly common example of a physical effect is the addicted person contracting hepatitis from an injection site, if they are addicted to an intravenous drug. A major mental effect of addiction is paranoia, and this becomes incredibly relevant when looking into the behaviors of a person with addiction in a group setting. A person with addiction is very likely to believe that their relationships, their family, friends, significant others are going to betray them or secretly despise them. In addition, people with addiction are very likely to become violent, especially if the thing they are addicted to is threatened to be taken away. People with addiction can become so trapped within their state that they may even become violent towards their loved ones. Addiction can have incredible effects in the workplace, especially if the work involves physical exertion. There are different stages of addiction, and each will have its own influence on the addicted person's performance. Addiction causes the person suffering to have loss of productivity and decreased quality of work, increased absenteeism, and significant decrease in morale, which can affect those around them as well. It is a common misconception that addiction is a condition that does not require a diagnosis because it can be obvious. To be diagnosed with a substance abuse disorder, the person must see a psychiatrist, a psychologist, or a licensed alcohol and drug counselor. Unlike other conditions, addiction can be accurately self-diagnosed and can be treated without a proper, immediate diagnosis. The most commonly known way to combat a substance abuse disorder is to be admitted to a rehabilitation facility. In these facilities, patients undergo both medical treatment and psychotherapy. If the person chooses to attempt recovery without medical intervention, there is a common recovery plan known as the 12-step plan. The goals of the 12-step plan is to overcome addiction and mend relationships that were damaged while the person was battling addiction. The film Beautiful Boy begins with the audience being introduced to the main character, Nick Sheff. We are shown a glimpse into Nick's life and childhood after his parents were divorced. We learn that Nick is prone to depression and lashing out, but his father is there for him and helps him cope by spending time with him. They listen to music, surf, and write poetry. In the 19th minute, Nick and his father are speaking about how Nick is incredibly successful and was accepted to 6 colleges. This is where Van Groeningen begins to create a deeper background which will then be juxtaposed to Nick's life during and after addiction. Nick admits to his father that he smoked cannabis on occasion to, quote, take the edge off this stupid reality. Cannabis is known as a gateway drug. It is a common precursor to a deeper addiction. In the 12th minute, there is a time skip to the present day where Nick's father begins to suspect that he may be addicted to methamphetamine. He finds that a person's mood changes more quickly and they can become angry or violent when they're on methamphetamine. This is a correct statement about the behaviors of someone with any addiction, but especially methamphetamine. Nick's father confronts him about his drug use, and Nick states that he, quote, "When I tried it, I felt better, and better than I ever had, so I just kept doing it." This is an incredibly accurate depiction of what the beginning stages of addiction look like. The person begins to use it recreationally, then they believe that their life is better with it, so they continue to take it to the point where it becomes a compulsion. David, Nick's father, tells him how disappointed he is. This is the beginning of the strain in the relationship. It shows the true effects addiction has on relationships, even the closest of bonds like father and son. 28th minute, 57th second. Nick has a serious girlfriend and attends her family's house for dinner. At this point, Nick is in college and has been sober for his entire time there. But when Nick goes to the bathroom upstairs, he opens the family's medicine cabinet and takes a pill. It is immediately evident that Nick regrets his choice and that he did not want to do it. The nature of addiction is that it becomes compulsive. Nick was no longer in control. His addiction was. This is an incredibly good example of the struggle someone with addiction goes through. Instead of painting Nick as a monster, Van Gruninger pulls at the heartstrings of the audience and shows that Nick is not a bad person, he just needs help. 31st minute, 59th second. Nick returns home from college for spring break while still taking methamphetamine. But even though he is under the influence, he is still playing with his younger siblings, joking around and having fun with them. There was a clear opportunity for Van Gruninger to put underlying tension and make the audience think that Nick is dangerous, but he didn't. He showed that someone with an addiction can still be loving and kind. In the 36th minute, 44th second, David finds out that Nick has been using again, and Nick relapses violently. His father threatened his addiction, so he begins to lash out at his family, and this begins to strain the relationship even more. 41st minute, 42nd second. David searches out a doctor specialized in addiction. The doctor gives real scientific facts about how methamphetamine changes the brain physically, specifically the amygdala, which is affected by most drugs, and changing the amygdala, causing it to be hyperactive and increases feelings of anxiety and fear. This shows that methamphetamine users can be physically unable to participate in treatment programs. Their brain is prone to the drug. This is a good representation because it provides scientific background to the audience so they do not think Nick is a horrible person and instead has a real inhibitor to getting better and getting help. From this point in the movie onwards, Nick is on his own and spiraling in his addiction. Nick has not spoken to his family in months and they do not know where he is. Hour 1, 30th minute, 52nd, Nick, after being MIA, breaks into his father's home while on a bender. He asks his father for help, but the relationship is so broken from the betrayals and lies that David denies Nick for the first time and tells Nick he is on his own. This is an incredibly authentic portrayal of how a relationship can shatter and seem beyond repair as a result of addiction. This representation is crucial because it shows how addiction can take people with the tightest bond and break it seemingly beyond repair. After this event, David takes down all of Nick's childhood photos and his works of art, signifying he is done. At the end of the movie, Nick overdoses on methamphetamine in a dirty bathroom in a big city, and the audience think that Nick dies. But after a long, black pause, we see Nick in a rehab facility with his father by his side. Addiction is a deeply misunderstood condition. People assume that addiction is a choice, and these people are voluntarily hurting themselves. This causes biases towards people with addiction. They are treated as less than and judged harshly. In addition, this bias limits funding to addiction help centers and prevents people from getting the help they need. Beautiful Boy is an incredibly poignant film that delves into the effects addiction has on relationships in an incredibly accurate way. Van Gruningen does not shy away from the dismal struggles of addiction, but he's able to do so without demonizing Nick. Unlike other pieces of media depicting addiction, Van Gruningen is able to show that people with addiction are still able to have joyful moments in their life and still have a place in this world. The representation of addiction in Beautiful Boy combats the preconceptions people may have about addiction and replaces it with a non-demonized character any audience member can sympathize with. In the box office, Beautiful Boy grossed $16.6 million. Assuming each ticket is $8, about 2,075,000 people saw it in theaters. In addition, The film is available every day on streaming services. Therefore, many more people have access to it. This accurate representation reached a significant number of people, furthering the understanding of addiction in the public at large. This is a representation that may stick with the audience, further pushing the cause. These people now have the basis to call out inaccuracies in conversation and inform people about what addiction truly is. In addition, this representation can give people incentive to do more research on their own and find more medically accurate information online. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this podcast, and I leave you with this. Question what you are told. Do not take the word of the media as gospel. Do your own research and form your own opinions. If you have a family member or friend that is struggling with addiction, the United States 24-hour addiction hotline is 1-800-222-1222. In the description of this video, hotlines for other countries will be attached. If you know someone struggling or are interested in the topic, the Mayo Clinic and the Recovery Village have incredibly detailed and reliable information available. Links to both of these resources are attached in the description as well.